It's that time again, it's time to grab our tools and fix what's broken. Let's save money and do it ourselves. Let's save money and do it ourselves.
Welcome to another Garage Time with Goody. Today, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be changing out the front driver's side strut on a 2013 Dodge Grand Caravan. Well, let's get to it. First thing you want to do is to jack up the side of the van. Then we're going to place these jack stands underneath you here. And then we're going to let the jack down. Now the reason why we're doing that is because we're going to need this jack in a little bit to lift up and down the control arm as we need to. So the first thing I'm going to do is I have some masking tape here, and I'm going to put it underneath the windshield wipers. Now the reason I'm doing that, you don't have to do it, but I'm just going to mark where the bottom of my windshield wipers are. The reason I'm doing this is because I'm going to have to remove these windshield wipers and the cowl, C-O-W-L, so that I can remove both the windshield wipers and the cowl to get underneath the cowl, and that is where the shock mount bolts are located. First we're going to start on the driver's side. As you can see, there is a plastic rivet or a standoff, whatever you want to call these, and it has a Phillips on it, and I just used a Phillips screwdriver to remove that. And then I'm going to go over to the passenger side, and it just has a regular flat top on it, so I'm going to use this pry tool here. I'm going to put it on there and just wiggle it back and forth until it pries up. It's going to look like that. I'm going to set that out of the way. Next, I'm going to need to remove the windshield wipers. And I'm just going to take a flathead screwdriver and remove these caps that go over top of the windshield wipers. It looks like it's going to be a 15 millimeter. Yes, these are 15 millimeter nuts right here. So just get you a 15 millimeter socket and remove these. Do not lose them. Next one's right here in the middle. Once it's loosened up, I just go ahead and just twist it off by hand, just like that. These windshield wipers are giving me a hard time. So if they give me a hard time, they could give you a hard time. Sometimes they just pop right off there. But what I'm going to use is this special tool that goes up underneath the windshield wiper, and this right here is going to push down on the bolt to pop it loose. And I'll put a link to where you can get this tool in my video description. As you can see, I've got it all the way in there, and it's going to push up against the bolt of the windshield wiper. Okay, so what you do is you turn this tool and it pushes down on the bolt, and then it pushes it up, And then I should be able to take off the windshield wiper. Yeah, I want to stress this has been a pain in the ass getting this off of here. This one here in the middle, I've used a regular hammer and I've used the claw on the back, and it looks like it's finally came loose. So I'm going to put the left one out of the way. So I just like to stress this has been the hardest part so far. Removing the windshield wipers are not as easy as I've seen in some of the videos, at least not for me. I had to keep working with it, using a claw hammer and also using this special tool. Now this cowl should pull forward and then up. It should push up, over, and out. And then you can see that the cowl is off of the van. I'm going to set it over, down, out of the way. While you're in here, you may want to go ahead and clean or just shoot this with some compressed air, because years of gunk is going to be in here. Like I said, while I have the cowl removed, I'm going to go ahead and use my air compressor and use compressed air and clean this out. But what this is going to give away to, what you can see is right here. This is what we're after. You see, this is the windshield wiper motor, and down to the right here, underneath. What you see here is the top 3 bolts that mount the strut to the top of the van. And the same on the passenger side. You'll see over here, these are the 3 nuts. You're going to use these 3 bolts to mount and install the new strut. Once you have taken off the tire, you want to check right here. This is the sway bar link. And I'm going to be changing the sway bar link and the strut. So a shortcut to do this is not to even bother with removing this nut, the top nut on the strut. So what you need is a pair of vice grips that I have here. These vice grips are going to lock on to the metal rod behind the sway bar link. And then remember which way to turn this wrench, which is an 18mm wrench. Remember, lefty loosey, righty tighty. And if you need to, use an anti-rust lubricant like PB Blaster. And I'm just going to be turning this until it comes off. Like I said, this is an 18mm. And this vice grip is going to keep this metal shaft on the inside from turning, so that nut will come off. And when it gets really loose, you should be able to remove it by hand. You can see, just removed that nut. And then I can remove the vice grips. Then what I'm going to do, as you can see this configuration here, I have the van jacked up and sitting on jack stands. Now the reason why I just have it on jack stands and then I have the jack right here freed up is because I put the jack underneath the control arm. It's going to support the weight of the wheel knuckle and the control arm, and it'll be easier for me to take the shock off. So you want to just put the jack underneath the control arm. Once you use the jack to jack the control arm up, it will take the weight off this sway bar link, and it should just be able to be pulled out like this, and you remove it. You do not have to remove this top one here. Like I said, it's just going to come off with the entire strut. Next, you're going to see this ABS line right here. There is a 10mm bolt right here that needs to come out. I'm going to go ahead, take that on out, set the bolt to the side, and as you can see, this is just going to slide right on out. And as it does, you can see this rubber grommet right here, and you're going to want to just kind of wiggle and push up and get this loose all the way down through here, and because you don't want this to get stuck when this drops down. Because here in a little bit, when we take these bolts out, this whole wheel knuckle and CV axle is going to drop down when we get ready to take out the strut. Next, we have these two 21mm bolts in the sleeve of the strut. And we also have a 21mm nut on the other end. Just going to take a wrench. It's 21mm, hold it on one side, and I'm going to use a 21mm socket with an impact gun and back these things off. Okay, that one's off. And then we're going to go for the second one that's down here. That was a lot of rust, but not anymore. It came right off. I just let the jack down, and that takes the pressure off of right here. As you can see, these are coming out now, and these should back on out, or you can take a punch and get them to come out. Either way will work. Once you take this one out, the wheel knuckle may slide down with the CV axle, but you can take your hand and hold it here on the rotor, and you can hold the wheel knuckle in place. There, that bolt came right on out, and now this should drop down, and this should separate. I'm pushing this down and to the left, and it should separate from this strut. Now it's time to go to the top. On the top here, you can see we removed the cowl, and this gives us access to the upper strut bolts. We're just going to remove them. Two of these are easy to get to. These are 13mm, by the way. There's one that is in between the wiper arm back there. How I'm going to get in between this wiper arm is I'm going to use a small 3-inch extension. Okay. And then the last one comes off. And then once the last one comes off, you can see that this strut has fell down to the tie rod end, and it's ready to come out. And this is how it comes out. And as you can see, the sway bar link is still attached because we're going to be replacing it. Now, if you're going to keep the same sway bar link, you'll need to repeat the process of how we took the bottom nut off of there, you'll take the top nut off there, then you can put the old one back on. But since we're replacing it, we didn't need to take it off. We're going to toss this old strut to the side. The next step is to make sure, you want to make sure that these sleeves that you insert the wheel knuckle into are straight, and that the mounting brackets up here are lined up with the bolts that you're going to be mounting from the top of the van. In this case, you can see there's 2 bolts this way, whereas there's 1 bolt right there. So what we have to do is determine the size of the bolt in here, or the nut. It is an 18 millimeter. Now I'm going to use a deep well, and I'm going to put this 18 millimeter in here on this bolt and loosen it up just a little bit. And since I've loosened it up a little bit, I should be able to move around this mounting bracket. And I'm going to line it up with the old one. You see how it looks like there's 2 here? We want to keep the bottom here straight, and we want to move this mounting bracket as close as possible. So keep this straight. This wheel knuckle holder, you want to keep it straight as it goes up, and then you want these lined up like the old ones. I'm going to go ahead and take those 3 nuts off, and I'm going to have my partner here as I go underneath. I'll show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go underneath here, and it pushes up the inside, or you should be able to see it come through at the top. And I'm going to have my partner to go ahead and hand tighten those 3 nuts on there. Okay, this is our new control arm. It's going to be a little easier to replace in the future, because instead of star bit or Torx in the front, some people like that. I personally don't. It just has a regular 18 millimeter bolt in the back where you can remove it, and it just has the same nut that goes over it right here. But anyways, what we're doing now, before we even put this on the van, there are these little boots right here, and it has a grease fitting. And I'm going to take this grease gun, and I'm just going to put a little bit of grease in it until you see the boot come out just a little bit. So we're going to go to the second fitting, and you just pump it a few times until this boot comes out. I'd say on a grease gun like this, pump it about 5 times. That should be enough. This little rubber boot will be a little poofy. Pull it back out, and any excess I'm going to wipe off with this rag here. So these are nice and greased now, and that will save you from, after you've installed it, from trying to fit a grease gun up under there and put grease on these. So now what we're going to do, we're going to insert this sway bar link and start this nut by hand right here. Then we're going to start, or I'm going to start to use the jack to jack up this control arm. And this is going to help me line this up with the slot, the wheel knuckle holder on the strut, and it's also going to help line it up here. And you can move it around. You can move this around freely. Now, once you have these lined up, you can put the bolts through, just like so. You want to be careful not to pinch the ABS line as you're doing so. And then these are the 21mm nuts right here. You can go ahead and get those started by hand. Now once those are started by hand, I like to go above on top again. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and torque these down, the top of the strut, and the torque specs are here, and we're going to go ahead and okay, those are on there. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten these two 21mm bolts here. I'm going to use a 21mm wrench like I did when I took them off. Now the torque specs for these are right here. All right, now we're going to go on the second bolt. And then that one is in. And then, as you can see, that this still needs to come up some in order for this sway bar link to fit in there. That is where the jack comes in. You can see that that's all it takes for it to push the strut up and for it to line up with the sway bar link. It'll go on just like that. Okay, next I'm going to take an 18mm socket, and I'm also going to have an 18mm open box wrench back here. Okay, the torque specs for this are right here. You can thank me later. I will also put the torque specs in the video description below. I'm going to use these vice grips down here, and then I'm going to take this 18mm wrench and tighten the nut in the back. And then let's take these vice grips off. Okay, after that you can see that the sway bar link is installed. These two 21mm nuts and bolts are installed. Up at the top, those mounting bolts are installed. So what we have left here is this ABS brake line here. We're going to take the rubber grommets and we're going to put them in these standoffs. Like right here where they have these little grooves, they fit right down in there. You might have to wiggle it a little bit, just like that, but it will go into place. And then we're going to take this slide. You can see that it slides right onto, you can adjust these stands if you need some slack, but this should slide right onto the strut, just like that. Okay, once that is on there, I'm going to start this by hand, this 10mm bolt. And I don't know a torque spec for this one, guys. If you know what it is, just put it in the comment section below. I'm just going to easily snug it down with a 10mm. I just easily snugged it down with a 10mm socket. struts on there good. So that means we are now ready to put the tire back on. I'm going to go ahead and release the jack. As you can see, there is the new strut with the sway bar link installed. We're now ready to put the tire back on. I'm going to start these by hand so that they don't get cross-threaded. Okay, we're almost done. What we're going to do now is jack the van up and retrieve our 2 jack stands, and then let the van down with the jack, and that's a job well done. And then just let the van down. Next, we have to put the cowl, the COWL, back on. You can see that the protruding, I call these ears up here, they go toward the top. And this thing is relatively easy to put back on. You can see the windshield wiper holes go to the right. And you're just going to put it above the hood and then tilt it slightly forward and let it slide on down over to where the windshield wipers go. You're going to make sure that these holes line up with the windshield wiper stands where the blades actually connect, and you'll just push it down and it should start sliding into place. As you're reinstalling the cowl, you'll just want to go around the perimeter, make sure it's on there good. And then these ears I was talking about, you'll want to stuff them under your fender and push down. And this will let the cowl actually line up perfectly where it's supposed to go into place. And you'll want to do this on the other side too. I'm going to take the ear, push it underneath the fender, and just push down, and you'll see that the rubber seal is flush with the windshield, the top rubber seal of the cowl. And then I'm going to take the 2 plastic push pins, and this one has a Phillips head on the top of it, as you can see there, and I'm going to put it into the cowl where it belongs, and then I'm just going to push it down, and then I'm going to take the Phillips screwdriver, and then I'm just going to screw that down until it holds the cowl into place. And over on the left side, there's just a push pin, plastic push pin that just pushes into place. You'll just line up the cowl to the hole and then push this push pin down into place until it goes in. And you can see that the cowl is now sturdy and that the rubber on top of the cowl is flush to the windshield. Now we are ready to put the windshield wipers back on. And there are some little tricks on getting these windshield wipers back on. If you forgot to take a picture or label which one is left or right, passenger or driver side, then there is a little way that you can tell by looking up these numbers. Every wiper has these numbers on there that are identifying. Notice that this number ends with a B. Most of the time, but not always, that means it's going to be the passenger side. And if you get a serial number that ends with a D, like this one here does, then that usually means it's the driver's side. But you can Google those numbers to make sure before putting them back on. So now I know which one is the passenger, which one is the driver's side, and I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the wiper blades. First, I'm going to take the driver's side and I'm going to bend it up a little bit because it is springy and it allows you to bend it up. And then I'm going to put the wiper on the shaft where the wiper is bolted down. I'm going to push it down and I'm going to line it up with that masking tape that I put on there in the beginning. And then I'm going to do the same for the passenger side. And then I'm going to line it up with that masking tape. I'm next going to get the two 15mm bolts that go on here. I do not have a torque spec. If you do, you can put it in the comment section below. But I'm just going to tighten these down to where the top of the nut is flush with the bolt or the nut. They both should be flush together. You can use a ratchet or an impact gun. I'm just going to lightly push the trigger on the impact gun, and I'm just going to make sure that each of these nuts are flush and that they go on perfectly. Now I need to place the plastic caps back onto the arms of the windshield wipers, and they just pop on and you can hear just a little click and it's on. Same with the driver's side, and it's on. And then you are done. You can see that everything is lined up and perfect. Just take a second glance over it and you will see it is done. And that is how you change out the front strut on a 2013 Dodge Grand Caravan with the 3.6 liter Pentastar engine. It's that easy. If you have any questions or comments, please ask them in the comment box below. Smash the like button, subscribe to my channel, and until next time, I'll see you later.